Welcome back to Open Door Conversations. This is episode 6 titled I've Been Triggered. Today, we are talking about how our past experiences or situations that we have gone through create thoughts and behaviors in our personal and relational lives. I am one of your hosts on Open Door Conversations, Rada.
And I am your other host, Fatima. Welcome, everyone.
Welcome. People who know me know I love to sing.
I was just about to say that as you continue to listen to our podcast, you will see that she will make a song out of any word, sentence, or phrase. But I love it because that is her.
Indeed.
So triggered.
I've been triggered. How do we come up with this title?
Probably like we do quite a few of them, trending words, trending topics, because everyone's triggered now.
That is true.
And triggered some, I won't take away and say that not all of them are actual triggers, but it's a word that's used often without, I think, a lot of people understanding the true meaning of being triggered. And like you said, it really comes from something in our past or even in our current present that has caused a deep hurt or a deep emotional response. And we're unable, oftentimes once we've gotten past that moment, we're unable to realize that that trigger is still there. Like when we say, oh, they really know how to push my buttons. So that's my take, my partial take on triggered.
Partial take. Okay. I think that's a good point you bring up. I think it is very important for us to possibly define for people because there is a lot of buzz around what triggers are. And I'll say sometimes our community may be the last to get a hold of, I'm going to say professional information or helpful information. And so I think it really is important for us to define for the for our audience what we mean when we say or what people sometimes mean when they hear the word trigger. And so I took this from like a psychological website. And in essence, triggers just mean it's a stimulus.
Hmm.
It could be a person, it could be a place, it could be a situation, it could be a thing. We're talking about stuff like sounds, smells. It could be I know a lot of people, us, we are veterans, and we oftentimes, of course, used to work around people who have been in combat. And, you can't slam your door too hard or loud, or, you got to be careful about, dropping stuff, because people at that point can be triggered by the sound of something. And essentially, that trigger, that stimulus contributes to an unwanted emotional or behavioral response. And that means that you were just living your life. You weren't expecting to have to hide under your desk or pop off or
Mm.
try to defend yourself. And so that response or reaction to the stimulus is an emotional, sometimes people cry, sometimes people get loud, whatever, right? Or it's a behavioral response. Maybe you're doing something or you do something in response to that stimulus. So I wanted to make sure that we started off maybe with that so that people are, aware of what we're talking about when we say, I've been triggered.
No, I love that. I love how you broke that down in that example of it. And you know, f- as you referenced, we're us both being veterans, and that is truly a response for individuals that have been in combat. But what I think also, what people may forget to recognize as well as those loud sounds can be triggers for those that may have grown up in an environment where there was a lot of gun violence.
Yep.
And so not realizing, it may be something because, we deploy, we're there for a little bit, we come back home. We may deploy again, come back home. But that's an environment they grew up in. And so they may feel that they're used to it. And you do hear that. Oh, I hear it all the time. So I'm used to it. Not realizing that when you remove yourself from that environment, then you go back to hearing those sounds, it takes you back to that place.
Right, right, right. Oh, I think that's so important because, we we like to educate people at heart. I think that's important to make sure that we maybe even cover different scenarios where people can be triggered. Because initially, of course, I started off with, veterans. You said, you brought up the piece on, people in environments where there may be a lot of violence, gun violence. Here's one. People can be triggered as a result of being abused
Mm,
verbally, sexually, emotionally, psychologically. What does psychological abuse look like, and what is a possible trigger that, okay, somebody's gaslighting? It's a
yes.
conversation and they're twisting things around, and, you know, and you get into a conversation later in life, maybe at work or in another relationship, and you find yourself, they may have just said, "Oh, yeah, I misspoke."
Mm,
And your mind is triggered back to, "Oh, no, I can't because this feels like," right? So I think that's something to know is that there are various situations that can cause triggers. And I don't know, something just came up, in my thoughts when we were talking about it was, just making sure that at least I want to talk to not being judgmental
mm,
about people's responses or reactions all the time because you don't
yes.
know their history unless you are in deep, I'm going to say, fellowship or relationship with people, friends or intimate partner relationships, siblings, whatever. If you don't know a person's history, you don't understand why they may be reacting or responding to something because this happened and it didn't bother you that way, right?
Because
You
we
don't
are
know.
quick to say,
Quick
I
to
don't know
say,
why he responded that way. I don't know why she responded that way. I don't know what's up with him or what's up with her. Absolutely, you don't know.
don't
So
know.
you can't judge, as you stated, their response. Their response is their response. Just like every individual's perception is their reality.
Yep.
And
Yep.
because you don't know it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. I love that.
Yes, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. That is a powerful statement. Now, we're not condoning violence or
Absolutely not.
condoning poor behavior or, you know,
Yes, let's put that
people
disclaimer
yeah,
out there.
yeah, let's put that disclaimer out here that you keep allowing people to do the same thing to you over and over again, and you constantly trigger. No, because your whole system is
Yeah.
fired up, and by system, I mean your nervous system is fired up. We're not saying you need to live in fight, flight, or free all the days of your life. No, no, no. We're just saying, be mindful sometimes. Maybe not be so quick to rush to, judgment.
And that goes also for those of us that are triggered. We have to recognize instead of popping off every time.
Say that.
Wait a minute. Like, wait a minute, why am I responding this way? What is it about what they said or what they did outside of violence that
Yes.
has me responding this way? And I had real quick, just the other day, I had a consultation with a client. She was calling for her daughter, and she was telling me about something she had said to her daughter. Basically, that her daughter was acting just like her mom, her grandmother, and the mom and the grandmother don't have a good relationship. And I asked her that exact question. I said, "What is it about what she said or did that triggered you and reminded you of your mom?" I said, "That's what we need to think, that we need to look at," because she felt really bad about how she responded to her daughter. But, I had to bring that to her, like, "What is it that triggered you to respond to her like that?" And she was like, "You know what? I never thought of that." I said, "That's where you need to begin, and then you need to explain that to her." I said,
Yeah.
"Because you can't just leave it, 'Oh, you went off on her,' and then y'all go back to a quote unquote normal relationship." I said, "That's where so many relationships fall apart at. We go off on each other, we get upset with each other, we don't talk about it, we don't communicate with each other like why that hurt me or what it was that you did that bothered me." We just let it go. And because I don't know, guess what? It's liable to happen again. And then you ready to pop off on me all over again.
all over it. Listen. Uh, when I tell you, you were given a whole account for the people in the back who have never been to therapy, that
Mm,
is an example of what a therapeutic process could be like for per person. That is where awareness, that's what you're talking, right? You are talking about people being aware of their own stuff.
mm,
When you started out, you talked about, like being aware of your own triggers. You gotta know, like, yeah, this is how it could look on the other end, but what about me when I'm triggered? Self-awareness is key, and that is a beautiful question that you can take away from this conversation. I don't know, maybe you should repeat that one because I wrote that down. I don't know about other people in the listening audience, but I wrote that down.
well, look, you go ahead and repeat it because, girl, you know me. I said it and it's gone.
We're like, listen, they got us on a recording.
Right?
What is it? I told one of my clients that yesterday. They were like, "Oh," I said, you better catch it. Catch it while it's coming out because I may not be able to repeat." But that's a good question. What about what someone said or did? What is it about what they said or did that triggered that type of response in you or in me? In that case, if you're asking that of yourself, I say, like, I remember my first clinical supervisor post grad, um, lovely person. She was phenomenal. And
Mm,
one of the things she told me, she's in our very first day on the job, she said, always be curious. You
yes.
need to be curious and you need to make sure your clients are curious. Tell them lean into what they're experiencing. It doesn't mean you necessarily they have that it's all true. You just got to lean into that. And that's what we're saying. Ask yourself those questions. You want to be a healthy whole person and being triggered by stuff or you reacting or responding in a way that you are saying, I don't like that. I don't like when I do that. Then ask yourself, where is that coming from?
Mm,
What about what they said or did? Why did that hit me like that? Why did it land like that for me? Why did I feel like that?
mm. And one thing that I like that you say often is don't engage.
Oh, yeah.
Um, and I think that that's one thing that we need to learn, all of us, when those moments do come, is to take a moment and not engage, not respond. Because
Yes.
if we're all honest with ourselves, when we get into those moments of anxiety or anger, frustration, sadness, all of those emotions, our body senses it. There's a change in our body. And
Yes.
when you begin to feel that those changes in your body, just take a moment, you know, and so that your first of all, your body can calm down.
Yes.
And then you can focus on what the true issue is.
Right, right, right. I tell people a couple of things. I think, from um, a nervous system, this is more like the science behind some of the things we're talking about is, when you get angry or frustrated, anger is never the primary emotion.
No.
Never. It's always something underneath that. And when you've been triggered by that, it is best to do exactly what Fatima said. And the reason being is because why? Most people don't realize, like, you are incapable of having any healthy cognitive thought train when you are triggered like that. You doesn't matter how many degrees you have, doesn't matter how many letters you got behind your name, doesn't matter what kind of training you've been in, whatever. Even cops. That's why we see what we see in the news.
Mhm.
Because guess what? When your nervous system, people like, oh, if I was in that situation, I wouldn't have done that. Stop playing
Mhm.
because you don't know what you would do in a situation like that. Your history could be triggered. You could
Mm.
possibly have an emotional or behavioral response that's unwanted. And so before you react in a way, it is absolutely imperative that you, especially when you're dealing with people that you love and you care about, right? Or you in a place where you don't want to lose something like your job. It's best for you to go and, like I tell my clients, take the beat, take the break. You have to. And the
Yes.
reason you are doing that is because your body, your senses have to come back into place, because what's happening when you trigger is your nervous system is online, which means your body and your brain are sensing, I am in danger. It cannot tell the difference between an active shooter, somebody blowing up something. Am I in a war torn environment? Am I running down the street away from somebody? Is the bear chasing me? Oh, or is this just my spouse?
Or is it memories of my mother or father coming with the belt, or them
Yeah,
yelling at me when I get up, or all
right.
of that, all
All
of
of
that.
it. So your body, your mind, and your body don't know that in the moment. And if you don't pause, I'm not, and we're talking, if you're in an unsafe situation, your body is telling you to get out, right?
Right.
But we're talking about when you are not in that situation. Here's the thing that Fatima's, I think you said was so crystal clear and important, was that you got to be assessing that before your body gets to that space where you're going into fight, flight, or freeze. You already know. Check yourself. Sometimes you just got to sit down and you got to have a conversation with yourself, write down, take a pen and paper out. You like,
Mhm.
what happens when I get upset? What
Mm,
happens when I am fearful? What happens when I am, feeling sad or down? What's my cycle? What does my mind do? Where do I feel that? Oh, I notice that my hands get sweaty, or my underarms itch, or my stomach has a pit in it, or my chest feels very tight. That's telling you,
oh, yes.
you hear that, when you feel that, it's telling you, pause, pause, right? You got other cues before you get into your body gets into that space, but we miss them. But when you start to feel that, if you don't stop, guess what's possibly going to happen? The full on trigger, and
Mhm.
your nervous system is going to go online, and it's going to do one of those three things: fight, flight, or freeze in that situation. And your response may not be something that you, or reaction, I should say, may not be something that you like, because you've been triggered.
Yes. Oh, I love that. I love the way you
I
broke
was
it
on
down.
and on. I'm so sorry, but I want to make sure people know that, because this may be your first and last time you listen to this. I hope not. But if it is, you want you to take away from these conversations things that you can do. But please, disclaimer, go find a therapist in your area,
Yes,
a mental health professional in your area, to help guide you through that process.
because it's a process, and it has to be a process that we're willing to take. I mean, I can even say for myself that I have to take those mindfulness steps
Yep.
when I, like you just said, when I feel myself getting riled up, it's like, okay, no, wait a minute, just take a minute, breathe. Just, it's funny because my husband always said, well, you just don't say nothing. It's better that I don't. Just give me a moment because I'm doing as my sissy said, I'm not engaging. I cannot engage with you right now. Either it's you or it's me, but let me figure it out so that I know how to better communicate what it is that I'm feeling right now. And was it always like this? No, because your girl would have been gone a long time ago had I not been going to school for counseling.
Right, right. That's so true, right? Thank goodness for growth and
Yes.
work and therapy and school. Like I tell people, therapy is the schoolhouse. You got one or two choices. You can go to school and get the price tag if you want to, or you just pay somebody else who already did.
Who already
That
did.
relies off of the knowledge and experience.
So one thing that we have talked about, and I love the way that you talk about it, is maladaptive behaviors.
Yes.
And for individuals that don't understand what those behaviors look like,
Mhm.
what how would it show up for them?
Ooh, yes. I think for some people, it can show up as, like, you ever been in a conversation and you just shut down,
Yeah,
like you go somewhere else,
yeah.
right? That's it's been developed as a safety mechanism, but it's not the most adaptive way to handle that situation. The difference between think about it, adaptive just means like I can um it's a healthy way of me engaging, right? Adaptive means that okay, I can move forward in this. Usually maladaptive behavior, something that we're doing is causing challenge for us internally or is causing challenge in our relationship, right? Think about probably most notable are people who we hear the buzzword narcissism a
Come
lot,
on.
right? And what are some primary behavioral characteristics of people who may fall on that spectrum? It could be something like, oh, you hear words, people hear buzzwords like, oh, they're just manipulating. That's behavioral, right? The way they talk, the way they, do things, right? Whatever. That behavior is maladaptive. Now, I don't want to get into a whole lesson on personality disorders, but I could. But when you think about that, that behavior is the result of some experience they've had
Mm.
that they have to learn how to deal with and manage. Give you a tip because they have experienced extreme emotional neglect or they haven't been validated. So, guess what they do? Their behavior in terms of trying to get what they want in a relationship is maladaptive, right? Those are just some common examples that come to mind. It could be, oh, to your point, we talked about lashing out or popping off, right? Just yelling, like,
Mhm.
oh, this happened, boom, I'm just going up from 0 to 10, just like that. That's maladaptive, as opposed to you stopping, gathering yourself, figuring out what's going on with you, and then coming back to that conversation. If you are yelling, fussing, and cussing, that's behavioral.
And so, real quick to that point that you just said about the yelling, fussing, and cussing, as they say, you will get when you recognize how to handle that. That is when you have individuals such as yourself and myself that when we are quote unquote triggered or we are upset, it's a total different response. It's not the yelling, it's the calm, quiet voice because that's the one that's letting you know, I have thought about this whole situation and now I'm about to read you, but in a polite way. But so my point gets across and that you understand that either this will or will not happen again, but this is how it's going, how it will be.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
and that's part of processing though. And so
Yeah.
like you said, it's a learned behavior. It's something that you have to learn how to do yourself. Now, will there be moments where just in the moment you just ready to pop off? Absolutely. But once you learn that response mechanism to like, okay, first of all, is it worth it? Number one. Number two, let me respond to a way to where it's not hurting me,
Right.
nor is it hurting the other individual, but they will understand.
Right. Right. That's so true. With with that being said, because I know we're kind of running out of time, but one of the things that like this type of work, I will tell you, can be very intensive,
Mm,
especially if you've experienced trauma or you've experienced a lot of relational hurt or pain in your life, or you've had a challenged upbringing. You know, I know we talk about sometimes in our own conversations, about like people that you will work with sometimes, like, "Oh, well, how's your childhood?" Because we're doing
mm,
assessment, and they're like, "Oh, it was great." And you start digging and asking different questions, and you find that people dad was there, but he wasn't there, he wasn't present, he wasn't focused, kinda like all the things we talked about on the episode, Daddy, Did You Know? And you
mm.
find that some of the things that people experience have caused these maladaptive behaviors. And all that means is that you have identified a way of functioning internally or in your relationships that is not helpful. It may have been safe for you back then, but now it is challenging those areas or other areas in your life or the relationships in your life. It makes it maladaptive. Nobody is adapting to that. Your relationships aren't healthy. You aren't thriving. And that's kind of what we mean by maladaptive. It's like you're not thriving as a result of that behavior. Your behavior doesn't cause you to thrive in the
Mhm.
areas that you thrive in. So, while again, foot stomping the need for you to find support with, mental health professionals or counselor, like uh, coaches, like that understand, this type of work. One of the things that you can Google people in your area. You can Google search uh, therapist directories like therapist.com, Psychology Today, some other, notable websites. I say notable
Yeah, their part.
because you want somebody that's actually going to speak with you. I'm not opposed to text message, therapy. Well, sort of. I'm biased. But you want an experience where people are really gonna be able to give you like some serious space to process those things, especially if they're tough. But here's a way to, I give a little exercise that we close out. I give a little exercise at home that can kind of help you start with identifying your triggers. I tell people to look at, I kind of call it a tree exercise. And you're looking at the roots that have caused some of the things that you are experiencing or the behaviors that you have, right? Or the triggers. And I tell people, look at the major events in your life, right? Look at the major events in your life that would be, you're like, this shifted something in me, shifted my thinking, shifted my behavior. And then you look at, okay, well, as a result, what were some of the ways I begin to think about myself or other people or the
Mm,
world around me? From that, well, okay, based on that particular event, because you can do multiple situations, but if you're doing one by one, okay, based on that event and that thought, what's my emotion around that, right? And what do I do? And then, okay, what situation, what person, what place, what thing is a stimulus?
mm,
Because you need to know that for yourself, right? You need to know what the thing is, what the stimulus is. And I think when we talk about self-awareness, that is just a
yes.
simple exercise that you can do to help you with self-awareness.
And to add on to that, I love that exercise and I love that idea. And let's just say that you are at work and you are triggered. You don't have to draw the whole tree at work. Just
I
take
know.
that moment to write down what happened in that moment. So then you can go back and reflect on it.
Right, right,
Like, why
like,
did I react that way?
right. That's
I love that exercise. I'm gonna have to get me a tree. I had to put it on the wall.
girl, I'll get send you the tree.
Look, I'm gonna put it on the wall too. I'm talking about I might need a big tree.
You know how to do tree.
So we can process this stuff.
Yeah, indeed, indeed. It does help when you got like best friends and sisters who are in the profession, and you can bounce that kind of stuff off. But, or try it, and if
Yes,
you don't have one, you can start with therapy
with therapy.
to be part of your tribe.
And again, a disclaimer, this is not a therapeutic session.
That's right.
Please find a licensed professional therapist in your area or a coach that is willing to help you do the work. And do your research before you commit to it because this is the work that you have to do.
That's right. That's right. It's so true. It's not about the therapist's feelings. It's about you getting the support that you need. And so you want to make sure if you're going to invest in treatment, time, energy, effort, emotion, money, that is it's a good fit for you. So I know later on down the line we're going to be talking about um, how to find a good person. Like, what does that look like for you? What are some things you need to be considering? If you're looking for therapists in your area. So I hope this was helpful. I feel like our conversation helped me.
Like, it always helps me. So like you said, it does help to have someone that is close to you that is in the profession.
Yeah.
Um, and luckily I've been blessed. I have several.
Yes.
Uh,
Yes. I work in a whole office full of them. It's such a bliss, like
It
16 of them. Everybody telling them. I'm like, yeah, you just go and sit on somebody's couch for free.
and right? But we thank you all for joining us on this episode of Open Door Conversations. And again, as Renata said, we hope that you were able to gain something from this. And as always, you can send us an email for questions or possible show ideas at opendoorcombo@gmail.com.
And don't forget to follow us on social media at Open Door Combo on Instagram, also Facebook. Until next time,
See you all later.
have a good one.